welcoming our next panelists, who will discuss how the United States and India are working to shape the future of geopolitics and technology. Dr. Anshuman Roy, founder and CEO of Rhombus Power. Nivruti Rai, Managing Director and CEO of Invest India. And Thomas Zacharia, Senior Vice President of Strategic Technology Partnerships and Public Policy at AMD. The conversation will be moderated by Dhruva Jaishankar, Executive Director of ORF America.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Dhruva Jaishankar. I'm Executive Director of ORF America, which is a public policy think tank working on US-India relations here in Washington, D.C., and an affiliate of the Observer Research Foundation, which is one of India's leading public policy think tanks. It's a great pleasure to be here and to partner with SCSP at this Expo. It's the second time we've actually done this following last year. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be discussing the prospects of US-India technology collaboration with a really excellent panel. In fact, I can't think of three better people who embody in some ways the US-India technology bridge between the two countries. I'll just briefly introduce them. Anshuman Roy, who is to my immediate left, he's the founder and CEO of Rhombus Power. Anshu has, and his team have a station here, a presence here at the Expo. I would encourage all of you to learn more about what he's doing, some really interesting, innovative work. To my far left, Thomas Zacharia, who is Senior Vice President at AMD. He previously spent a long career at the National Labs at Oak Ridge and has a background in high-performance computing, amongst other areas. And finally, Nivruti Rai, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Invest India. She previously worked for many years at Intel, both in the United States and in India. So again, all three bring a wealth of policy, but also private sector experience to this. I'm going to start by asking Nivruti, since you've come all the way from India for this and you're new guys in Invest India, maybe talk to the audience here. I mean, it's a very exciting time in some ways for the US-India partnership, particularly in the tech sector. We have, on the one hand, some really rapid innovation happening in the AI and tech space in the United States. A great deal of interest in India, which is also generating not just a vast amount of data, and there's just extraordinary amounts of data being generated in India, but also applications as well, and really fertile ground for some new applications. So maybe talk to us a little bit of a few areas where you see as top of the list for US-India collaboration in this space.
Sure, can you hear me? Oh, great, thank you. So before I start, I just want to say that, the contest that the world today is engaging in is for data centers, for AI, and, also leveraging them for power and making this a central axis for geopolitics. The second thing I want to say was my conversation with Thomas. He was reminding that, in the previous discussion, there were things that were going too fast or expected to go too fast, and some things were going too slow. And he referred to the book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And that suddenly got a thought triggered in my head that India and the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is thinking two ways. He's thinking fast, and he's also thinking slow. And that's the first time, I am 50 plus years old. I have seen very many prime ministers and presidents. Half of my life was in US, half of my life was in India. But I can tell you, he has a plan for 2047, and he has a plan for 2030. For 2030, we are running fast like anything. And for 2047, we are thinking strategic and thinking long term. So in that sense, I absolutely love Thomas's comment that, it is sounding like an oxymoron, but actually, India is thinking fast, and India is thinking slow and longer term. For the first time, a prime minister is thinking beyond his 5 years term. He has defined a North Star for us, and all of us are working towards it. Whether we are being a rabbit in certain case or a turtle in another case, we are doing it both. Having said that, there are two areas that I want to talk about that, Dhruv mentioned how India and US can collaborate. By the way, When I think of AI, I think of economic productivity, I think of military power, and I think of information control. And that is why AI is very, very important. Many a times, people often think of AI as productivity and efficiency, and sometimes disruption, but all in economic terms. Do not forget that AI can be a military powered and AI can have information control challenges. So what can India and US do? Me and my team work for Invest India. And Invest India, our goal is to identify the companies and countries which are strategic for India, and India can create a win-win for them. So when we look at United States, I look at the semiconductor strength. I look at capital strength. I look at strength for a lot of IP and patents and technology. So I think there's a lot that US can offer. But over the period of time, the 25 years, India has grown up from an infancy to an adult. India has R&D to offer. India has scale to offer, the large-scale digital platforms, unified payment interface, GST. We have demonstrated that we can build really large-scale platforms. And the third thing India has is a very strong, supportive government who knows what the North Star is. And yes, we have challenges of ease of doing business, but we have a listening ear. I can tell you, I can phone call my minister to make a change if a United States company says, this is a win-win opportunity for India and US and global good. Here's the change I want to make. He's listening. So we have a very supportive government, and I'm saying India and US can partner together in semiconductors, in AI, in data centers, in talent, and the three things that I want Dhruv, us to commit is to build a joint R&D capability with AI as a focus. I want to build a trusted fab investment. While I completely agree that United States is working hard to supply chain diversify from China and Taiwan, but I know the mature nodes does not make sense to be invested in India, in the United States. So us as India will offer very strategic, trusted investment in semiconductors. And lastly, talent mobility. No matter what United States does, 350-ish million is your population. You cannot manufacture people. We have people, and we want a trusted corridor, Dhruv, where we can enable technology transfer, we can enable resources, and we can drive R&D together. And drive such that the three focus areas that the world is driving for, which is AI, data centers, and semiconductors, partner to drive that central axis of geopolitics, not just for US and India, but for the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, if I can turn to you, first if I can ask in your capacity as an AMD, what is your AMD's relationship right now in India, and what has been your experience there recently?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, I think. Good morning, good afternoon for being here. This is a really important discussion at an important time as there's a realignment of geopolitics and supply chain. And it's very clear to me that the strategic partnerships at the highest level of both countries have never been as aligned as it is today. And AI is, from an AMD perspective, is a transformative technology. And personally, I would say, I see that as an infrastructure layer. So if you think about energy as an infrastructure to drive society, public goods, the next big transformation was the internet, right? There are many companies that the household names today could not exist without the internet, the TCP/IP protocol that allowed them to have the scale. I think of AI as a reasoning layer infrastructure that allows the next generation of innovation, public good, societal challenges from healthcare, education, national security, energy infrastructure, etc. Now, from an AMD perspective, we're a leading semiconductor company. We like to say that we are a 60-year-old startup because we bring that ethos, and we go from CPUs to GPUs to the edge with FPGAs, as well as now with the AI PCs, right? So there are lots of things that you can do with AI PCs. We, as a company, could not exist today without a third of our workforce that is in India. Many of our leading edge products that are delivered today globally have its significant contributions, pivotal contributions from Bangalore and Hyderabad and so on. So this is really interwoven into the fabric. And so here is a tremendous, we just, our CTO just last year announced a $400 million expansion in terms of our office and other infrastructure, which tells you how bullish we are. So what I would say is that as we think about AI, I'll go back to the thinking fast and slow. There are fundamental, we need to recognize the legacy systems and infrastructure that exist both in US and in India. And some of these advances can only occur at the pace at which these physical and legacy infrastructure allows you to do. For instance, there are many things that was mentioned that can be done, but if in terms of, it was discussed about 20 to 25% of people and the data, but only 3% of the data center. Well, AI infrastructure and the data center require energy or power as a fundamental requirement. And those things don't scale at the speed of AI. These things take 5, 10 years of very thoughtful deployment. And so the way I think is that in terms of a joint partnership between US and India, if you think about it as a holistic stack, there are things where US can bring parts of the layer, and there are things where India will bring parts of the layer. So together, we can have a full AI infrastructure stack that is there for public good, for both countries and indeed globally. So,
a quick follow-up. What prompted AMD or any other tech company to actually invest in get a third of their workforce in India? What was it? The talent, the cost? What is it that?
So actually, I was not there for the long term, but as best as I can understand, it remained an experiment in terms of, okay, India is an important country, it's an important partner, we're going to have some presence there. And I can tell you that it was only recently that it allowed us to really scale in India. And that part of the history I know very well. And it has nothing to do with cost, it has everything to do with talent. And so it is a talent in India, and it's not just, there's a sense that it is a low-cost work that gets done in India. That is not true. It is really critical, pivotal, talented work that gets done in AMD India.
Anshu, if I can turn to you, you work in the sort of tech and national security space. Mm-hmm. What are some of the opportunities that new technologies, AI specifically, have enabled that sort of allow you to work in places like India now, which has not been a U.S. treaty ally, but which has had a sort of growing geopolitical partnership with the United States?
Well, Dhruv, thank you for the question. I think when we look at the sort of the arc in which technology has progressed in leading up to artificial intelligence and sort of this explosion we are beginning to witness, and also some hype, I think what we are experiencing is the benefit of the convergence of cloud compute, communication, improvement in network speeds, and ultimately the open source movement. Those three things, when combined with sufficient amount of capital, have resulted in this moment that we are in. Now, when we turn our attention to India, fundamental to this is this notion of open source, commercially provided solutions. And in the security space now, as I hone into that, what you're looking at is the ability to see 99.999% of what happens on the Earth with purely commercial sensors, and that generates a ton of information that can then be processed at speed and relatively cost effectively to then bring insights that can then be jointly shared because they are in the open source. And that is the vision that ultimately led us to India. And when we got there, we realized that it's a completely green field. There is so much opportunity that I honestly see more growth happening in India in the next 5 years than in the US, in our space.
And again, just for people who may not know, a lot of the work you do in other geographies in the United States and Japan, elsewhere, is in the more classified realm, right? What are some of the differences between operating in that area versus operating in a more open source environment as you do in India?
That's a great question. So what has become clear to me is that when you get inside the so-called classified domain, it's more a discussion of vulnerabilities than it's a discussion of capabilities. See, the problem there's an underlying issue there, which is the open source and the commercial world actually enable you to see the vulnerabilities of others far more than you yourself might be aware of at scale. And so, in a sense, we are kind of moving slowly towards a world where there may be no secrets. And so, how do you then operate, and how do you define your allies and partners now? Is it going to be just opportunistic? Is it going to be based on relationships that go back to World War II? How will this work? It's an open question at the moment, but I think it's important for countries that are trying to leapfrog in capability, and that includes a number of different nations, including Singapore, Taiwan, and so on. What's important is that they don't pick up the same legacy habits, shall we say, that were born out of necessity and capabilities that existed at the time, so that they can actually move forward very, very quickly. I mean, think of undersea cables. We still look at the threat to undersea cables like we used to do in 1800s. We send a ship to go check. Okay, and it's just ludicrous because you can do it so much more easily. I mean, you can sit in your living room and see it. You can go to. I mean, there are ways to do it. So that's just one example.
Okay. A quick sort of rapid fire round for all three of you, and then I want to turn to some the audience if they have a few questions. If there's one thing you would like to see in the next 1 to 2 years, in the next year or two, there'll be some big moments for the U.S.-India relationship. We expect there to be a Quad summit, a meeting of the leaders of the U.S., India, Australia, and Japan. Possibly it's scheduled to take place in India later this year. Next year, India is probably going to be hosting an AI Action Summit, a follow-up from the Paris conference this year. So there'll be a few moments over the next year to sort of advance the U.S.-India technology partnership in some meaningful ways. And we've got the sort of positive signals from the Trump administration following his meeting with Prime Minister Modi in February of this year. So if there's one thing you would each like to see advance over the next year in the US-India tech partnership, what would it be? What would be on the top of your wish list? Maybe Nivruti, you start.
For me, I want to see India and US partner and create many deep seeks, because I personally feel that the opportunity is now, which is, I call it double exponential. There's a hardware exponentiality. 15 years ago, you could only put 500 million transistors in a chip. The same size, you can put 200 billion transistors. Our lithium battery is 10% of what it was. So hardware is doing amazing. But India has 6.5 million software guys. And between India and US, 50% of AI engineers lie, 70% of semiconductor designers lie. Can we not do many deep seeks and many perplexities guided towards certain focus areas like health, like military, like education? So I'm really looking forward to signing up between two companies, many deep seeks and many perplexities.
Actually, just earlier in an earlier discussion we had, you mentioned that India has 1 doctor per 1,000 people.
Yes.
and we should, AI can enable effectively 7 doctors per 1,000 people, you
Absolutely.
said, right? So that's sort of there's some concrete examples of applications that are there to be taken advantage of. Tom, what's up here?
Yeah, so this question I will put on my former lab director of Oak Ridge hat and talk more about the science and science enablement opportunity. AI didn't happen overnight. It just the moment the convergence of technology came and there is all this excitement. It happened because of consistent long-term investment in science and technology post the World War, right? So coming from Oak Ridge National Laboratory that played a pivotal role there. After the war, there was this endless frontier, for most of you, you may be aware, where Vannevar Bush said, that is really investing in innovation is where you achieve this constant leadership in technology. And what I see is that what we take for granted in innovation in the US is what, if you look at China, they have been investing heavily and catching up over the last 2 decades or more. I'm beginning to see the same in India, even though Indian investment in R&D is a much smaller fraction than what I think it needs to do. I think part of the reason why I say that is that government can invest in a couple of different ways. One is to invest to subsidize capital, CapEx. Or you can invest to create the demand signal, right? And I think investing in creating the demand signal is much more longer lasting. And that is where continued investment in science and technology is very important. I'll give you a small example. India, I mean, I like to say we're all, born with similar distribution of capabilities. That would tell you that if you have a Gaussian distribution of smart people, India has an advantage because you have, it may be the same percentage, but you have more number of people who are on the far end of that really bright people. Now enable them with AI infrastructure to tackle some of the big challenges. What are the big challenges? Today, there's about 1 billion people still do not have access to clean, energy, to electricity in this world. And so solving fundamental challenges like that, healthcare, education. So IIT Madras, there is a group that is doing some of the finest high resolution scans of brain to tackle healthcare challenges. And we were just, as AMD, they approached us and we connected them to education institution, research institution in the US. So there is more opportunity to really build that ecosystem while we are building, in the near term, the AI infrastructure to tackle near-term challenges.
Anshu? Your wish list.
So my wish list over the next 1 to 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Time scales are important.
Time scales are important.
Time scales are important. So I think what I would love to see happening is some companies making just a ton of money over the next 2 years so that you can call it quick wins, so people can look at it and say, oh, we got this, we can do it too. I think that would be amazing. And that's a purely business, it can be solved through simple changes. Nothing significant needs to be done. Yeah, and I fully agree with the approach of setting the demand and so on. Those things will very much help. I think, but at the heart of it is this, I believe in quick wins, and I think seeing those wins happen would be amazing, like Nivruti was saying.
You mean in the Indian corporate sector?
In the Indian corporate sector. So American companies that were able to get there and make money. Here's the point. I don't think you can count many companies that ended up investing in China and actually made money. Okay. I mean, that's just, most people lost their shirts. And if you look at macroscopically, India is the next destination and look at the GDP gap and say, well, where else are you going to put money? I mean, this is it. Okay, well, you put money, did you make money? That's the calculus. And if that can be done over a shorter time scale, then I think that'll be a virtuous cycle we start.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. I see microphones on both sides. If 1 or 2 people want to ask a quick question to any of the panelists, we have about 5 minutes left. We might have time for it. If not, I have plenty of questions I'd love to ask. Please, if you could just go up to the microphone and yeah, thank you. While you're doing that, anybody else on this side wants to volunteer? Thank you. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, thanks. So my question is like, in the United States, we see that major trend of academia merged with the corporate. We see eminent scientists and technologists who bring their fundamental knowledge, become part of the corporate, and build the pillars of technology that helps the company to win. In India, maybe I'm wrong, I am not that much knowledgeable, but maybe that piece missing in that magnitude. So what do you think that is going to happen there in a couple of years in that sphere?
Yeah, maybe for Nivruti, we have the examples. I think people cite Silicon Valley as a good example of that. The Research Triangle in North Carolina, the Cambridge Corridor in the UK. I think the one example I can kind of think of is an ecosystem that is developed around ISRO on the space sector, where you have a lot of former ISRO scientists now spinning off private companies. But Nivruti, do you have any sort of examples?
Yes. So I agree with you. It's probably not at this. I lost where you are. Yeah. I agree with you. It may not be at the scale that United States is doing with different universities like Stanford and MIT. But I can tell you that IIT Chennai is involved so much. If you look at the RISC processor, long time back they did Shakti 1. Now they have many versions of Shakti. So it's a combined effort. I can also tell you during COVID, the many scaling of platforms that we did was in partnership with academia. But I can also tell you the last thing, that it's beginning, and I completely take your input. However, what we are doing is we are bringing industry, investor, regulator, government, and academia together. Industry, investor, regulator, government, and academia together, because we need money, we need academicians' mindset and research thought. We need industry because, like I said, by 2030, we have to double our economy, GDP. So we have all of these alliances that are forming, whether it is ISM Semiconductor Alliance, whether it is AI Alliance. So we are trying to do that, but still in, infancy, and I'm definitely trying to learn from US.
And a couple other examples. There's been a very recent injection into 4 AI centers of excellence.
Yes.
I think that's been, but it's quite a recent, and one could say it can be scaled
up. There's
up.
the Atal Innovation Mission. Yeah. So there's Atal Labs that government and academia are working together. So there are many areas, from education to building to, researching, many areas that government is doing with, the 5 fingers that I talked about.
Yeah, but it's early stage, as you said.
Yes.
It's very early stage. One question over there, please, ma'am.
Hi, I was wondering if the panelists could maybe respond to the administration's decision to pause foreign visa interviews with and the removals of some Indian academics and nationals over the past few months. I'm wondering what you guys think this means for the future of sort of cross-US-India innovation, especially in academia, and how you think both groups could move forward and to sort of fix the fractures.
Want to take it? Or I can add.
So I'm a product of U.S. education system. I came here having completed all my undergraduate high school through undergraduate degree in India and came here. And I would like to think that both India and the U.S. has invested in my education, and I certainly have contributed back to the U.S. That a vibrant academic institution exists because of the diversity of viewpoints that we have. So I think that, so fundamentally, U.S. academic institutions are enriched by people trained and at other places and bringing diverse viewpoints and thoughts into the academic research enterprise. Now, it has to be carefully balanced by the national security interests of the country, and so that part, I will leave it up to the administration to balance that.
If I may add, I just want to tell you that Indian students enable $9 billion of tuition fees, economics. Number 2, you go to any campus. I have been in the technology world, so I can tell you, whether it is Intel, whether it's AMD, Google, or Microsoft, 30% of the people here are Indians. If I look at the summation, it's I think 4.5 to 5 million Indian Americans that are here. I also feel that a lot of innovation that is driven in US, a lot of Indians are part of it. So I think economy will suffer, innovation will suffer, collaboration and larger good will suffer. So therefore, I believe that this is, temporary. And I'm waiting for day after tomorrow and say, oh no, there's no issues on student visa for children coming from India. So that's what I'm waiting for, because I know that people in the United States are smart. They will not miss economics, they will not miss growth, and they will not miss collaboration for the larger good.
Anshu, anything to add?
Well, I'll just say that I agree with all of that. But there is a problem of fraudulent visas being issued in the name of fraudulent universities in the United States. I'm aware personally of them. Not that I report those people, I'm just telling you. It does exist, and it is at some level of scale, not very large, but it is there. And I think this does send a signal to those folks to not commit fraud, that's for sure. On the flip side of it are all the things that Nivruti and Thomas were talking about. Of course, I'm a beneficiary of the same system. I came here as a grad student, and
Me too.
and I stuck around, and
Yep.
and I think I did okay. So it's a question of in the longer term, you obviously America must and always must be the country that attracts the brightest and the best. If that stops being the case, the idea of America goes away. That's my thought.
Just to endorse and probably end on this note, there are over 300,000 Indian students in the United States. They're the largest number. And there was a study done a few years ago now by the Carnegie Endowment, which tracked people presenting papers at the top AI conferences. And the second largest number of presenters in that conference had an undergraduate degree from India and were working in the United States. So all I'm saying is they're clear numbers to indicate that Indian students have been major contributors to the AI ecosystem here. And while I think every country, including the United States, is well within its sovereign right to decide the number and the qualifications and criteria for students, and as Anshu pointed out, there are cases of fraud. Ultimately, I think there's decisions about whether this benefits the United States, because there is going to be a war for talent. There is going to be, that talent is going to go somewhere. And so I think those are just questions that we'll have to weigh on this administration and future administrations as well. So with that, please join me in thanking our panelists. Please stay and talk to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.